The first thing I remember was the silence. Not the ordinary kind, but the deep, unnatural stillness that seemed to flatten everything, even the air in my lungs. It started halfway through our school field trip to the old Barker estate, an abandoned 19th-century mansion just outside Woodstock, Vermont. The property was part of a local preservation tour, something about architecture, local heritage, and the town's connection to the early logging trade. None of us cared. We were 16, more interested in sneaking photos than in listening to the guide drone on about cornices and floor joists. The bus stopped at the end of Ridge Road, a narrow, tree-lined stretch that wound through birch and maple until it opened into a gravel driveway. The house stood there, tall, pale, with boarded-up windows on the upper floors and ivy crawling up the east wall like veins on old skin. The teachers gathered us into small groups and gave the usual rules. Stay together, stay respectful, don't wander off. My group was me, Ethan, Maya, and Josh. Names changed, of course. We stepped inside the Barker house and I instantly felt the temperature drop. It wasn't imagination. The rest of the class shuffled forward, the sound of sneakers on warped wood echoing faintly. My breath fogged in front of my face, though no one else seemed to notice. I glanced at Ethan. He was rubbing his arms, frowning. Maya shot me a look that said she felt it too. The main hallway was lined with mirrors, tall ones that had lost their shine, their silver backing peeling away like old paint. The guide was saying something about Gilded Age craftsmanship, but his voice sounded distant, like it came through water. I stared into one of the mirrors as we passed. My reflection lagged behind by a fraction of a second. I blinked hard, stepped back, and it was normal again. The guide led us toward the grand staircase, where he explained how the original family had died of typhoid in the late 1800s. The teachers took photos, pretending to look interested, but I couldn't stop looking down the side corridor to my right, a narrow hallway that branched off into shadow. Something about it didn't look right. The wallpaper seemed newer, somehow, brighter. I could make out faint light seeping from an open doorway at the end, flickering like candlelight. I nudged Ethan and pointed. He saw it too. The others didn't react. The tour moved on, turning left toward the kitchen. I hesitated, watching that flicker at the end of the hall, pulse once, twice, then go dark. We followed the group into the kitchen. The smell hit immediately. Stale, damp wood and rust. Dust motes drifted in the narrow beams of light from the boarded windows. The guide gestured toward a rusted stove, speaking about the coal-burning era, but I wasn't listening. Behind us, a faint sound. A footstep. I turned sharply. The doorway to the dining room stood open, empty. The air felt charged, static crawling over my skin. Ethan noticed me staring. His face was pale. Maya's eyes darted to the doorway too. Then we all heard it. Slow, deliberate footsteps, heavy and dragging. They came from the corridor we'd passed earlier. No one else turned. The teachers kept nodding along to the guide's explanations. The other students laughed quietly, oblivious. The sound grew louder, closer. Then it stopped. I caught sight of something faint in the reflection of a rusted pot hanging above the counter. A figure, standing just inside the hall. I spun around. No one was there. I whispered Ethan's name, but no sound came out. We backed away from the doorway, our sneakers squeaking faintly on the floor. The kitchen felt smaller, tighter. Then the overhead bulb flickered, once, twice, before shutting off completely. The guide's voice carried faintly from the next room, oblivious to the sudden dark. My heart hammered against my ribs. The air was freezing now. Something brushed my hand. Cold, weightless. I flinched, dropping my phone. It clattered to the floor, screen flashing briefly before going dark too. When I picked it up, the reflection in the screen didn't match the angle of my hand. It showed a faint silhouette standing behind me, just for an instant, before it vanished. Ethan swore under his breath, though no sound carried. The three of us stumbled backward into the hallway again. That corridor, the one with the flickering light, was lit now. The candlelight glowed faintly at the far end. Josh gestured frantically toward it, and we moved as if drawn. The air there was thick, heavy, every breath like inhaling cold mist. The sound of faint breathing, not ours, filled the space. Halfway down the corridor, my ears popped. A deep pressure pressed against my skull. My vision blurred around the edges. The candlelight at the far end flickered violently, then steadied. We stepped into the open doorway. The room beyond was empty. Just an old parlour with torn wallpaper, a collapsed piano in one corner, and the faint scent of smoke. The light came from a half-burnt candle on the mantel. Impossible, because everything else was coated in dust. Then the piano made a sound, one single note. Not from vibration, not from anything moving, just a sound, resonating out of nowhere. My pulse spiked so hard I could feel it in my throat. Maya turned her head sharply toward the doorway. She was staring at the reflection of something in the cracked mirror above the mantel. There were shapes moving behind us. I turned just as the air changed. A blast of icy wind shot down the corridor, extinguishing the candle and plunging us into blackness. My breath fogged again. The air filled with a faint hum, almost mechanical, like a deep vibration running through the wood. Something brushed past my shoulder, heavy and fast. The boards beneath my feet creaked as if someone else had stepped between us. Then, faintly, whispering, layered voices, too fast to understand, overlapping like a broken recording. Josh grabbed my arm, pointing toward the doorway. Through the darkness we could see the hallway stretching longer than before, impossibly long, as if the house had shifted. The end of it was lost in shadow. We moved fast, panic cutting through the cold. The corridor seemed endless. The floorboards groaned under each step. My lungs burned. Behind us, the faint sound of someone running, not quite in sync with our own footsteps. Then came the smell, iron, like rust and wet earth. The hum stopped. Silence. We reached the main hall again, or what looked like it. But the mirrors were gone. In their place, dark panels reflected only faint outlines, warped and stretched. My reflection twisted as I moved. Ethan's was gone entirely. The guide's voice suddenly returned, faint at first, then clear, echoing from somewhere above. The house was alive again with normal sound. Footsteps, laughter, chatter. The temperature rose instantly. The light returned to normal. The corridor shortened back to what it had been. When we stumbled into the main room, everyone was there. The rest of the group, the teachers, the guide, all standing casually as if nothing had happened. The guide looked at us, slightly annoyed, asking if we were lost. We nodded mechanically and joined the group, hearts pounding, eyes scanning the room for any sign of what we'd just experienced. But everything was normal again. I looked at Maya. She was pale, lips trembling. Ethan wouldn't meet my eyes. Josh kept glancing at the mirror on the far wall. Inside its cracked surface, just for an instant, a shape moved. Faint, almost imperceptible. It stood at the edge of the reflection, half hidden behind the staircase, watching. The guide asked us to take one last look before heading back to the bus. We didn't. I walked out first, the sunlight hitting my face like a slap. The cold vanished the second I stepped outside. The others were laughing, taking selfies, completely unaware. I looked back once, at the windows of the Barker estate. Something, or someone, stood behind the glass on the second floor. It wasn't reflection. It wasn't light. It was still, watching, exactly where we'd been. I blinked once, and it was gone.